Hey there, everybody. This is PTPOP with A Mind Revolution. And today I'm going to be interviewing Mike Wendt. He is a Cleveland, Ohio filmmaker, production coordinator, and artist here in the Cleveland area. And he works with the Greater Cleveland Film Commission. And before we get over to Mike, just let me tell you a little bit about my documentary, Road to Forgiveness. This is my latest documentary. And this is something I just put out in November, and it discusses my upbringing by two alcoholic parents and living in poverty. So it's an autobiographical film. I've got a lot of great responses about it. It's on YouTube. It's for free. So check that out, and I'll put a link to it in the description here. But we do have Mike. Mike Wendt. Thanks for coming on the show tonight, Mike. And I'm really
Thanks
glad.
for having me.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you. I met you a couple of years ago. I think it was at a Greater Cleveland Film Commission event.
Yeah, probably. I think a mix. Yeah, I think I remember we met at a mixer, or it might have been one of the film cafes at Music Box Supper Club, and then you and I had connected. We went to Gypsy Bean, and yeah. So I'm always glad to chat with you.
Yeah, you've always been very friendly and open, and you give me some referrals, which I really appreciate your support. And I think that's what I want to do with this podcast is I want to start talking with people like you in the area, because I think it is an art community. I think the Cleveland art community is kind of fractured. I mean, you've got the Cleveland Heights community, you've got the Gordon Square and 78th Street, and then you've got Ohio City, and we kind of all don't know each other, and unless you're always out and networking, and most of us at least I used to be kind of reclusive and quiet and withdrawn as an artist. And I've had to force myself to go out and network, which is kind of painful for me. But
yeah, you're right in that regard where I've met a lot of people, like, different meetings or coffee meet or mixers or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when people have recently moved to Cleveland, I think the general consensus is, you kind of hit the nail on the head where it is a little bit fractured, and it's just a lot of people are doing a lot of different things. So there's just not like sometimes that obvious person or group of people that you should interact with in order to get immersed in Cleveland. So I've like kind of dabbled with all the different groups, so I can sometimes help connect people through those, through the waters, just because you're right. I mean, it's just, we have so many talented people here, but a lot of times they don't always know each other, or they're not always super connected.
And you're one person that is so friendly, and when I met you, you were just so genuine and friendly, and you've been helpful to me with at least one of my films, or at least trying to give me referrals. And I think that's really awesome, because it's really hard to get people to open up. I think a lot of people as artists were kind of paranoid, like thinking someone's going to steal our ideas, or
Sure.
And I understand that as I'm a musician and a writer and stuff, but I think it's great that you're somebody. You should start your own organization where you're coordinating an art group or something. I don't know how to do this, because I just moved into the Twist Grill building on Lakeside.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of artists there, but the fine artists are all locked off in their own wing, and I can't get over there. And then there's a guy next to me that I've spoken to once. He's a filmmaker too. And then there's a tattoo artist down the hall, and a photographer I just met at the other end of the building. But we're all in our own little world, so we don't speak to each other too much. I'm going to try to get them all on this show too. So, check out, I've got your website here. Check out Mike's website, Mike Wendt Productions. It's www.mikewendtproductions.com. And Mike's got quite a portfolio of work behind him. And I guess I was going to start off with your work with the Greater Cleveland Film Commission.
Sure.
And if you can tell me a little bit about that organization and what they do and what you do while you're working for them.
Yeah. So the Greater Cleveland Film Commission is a 501c3 nonprofit. The main goal of the commission is to help drive economic development here in Ohio by hoping to attract films and television to the area. We've had great success over the last several years here,
Hmm.
and it's generated about 1.33 billion to the local economy. So,
Oh, it's
um,
generated that much.
yeah, and
Wow.
that's since 2009.
Wow.
Um, so there's always things that we're working on to try to help make it better. Obviously, we want to. We've been providing. We've kind of upped the game as far as more workshops to get more people interested if they're, you know, interested in getting to like the production assistant level. But then also, we've been talking to different various people about, hopefully cultivating some longer term things like a soundstage and
Hmm.
uh, probably, down the line as well, hopefully having a fully fledged grip and electric house. We have some small um, companies here or we have some rental houses, of course, but the largest grip and electric house in the state is located in Cincinnati. So
Hmm.
a lot of times if people shoot here, they have to send somebody down to Cincinnati to get
Sure.
the gear. So it's always better if you can have it on the local side. And that's not to like take away the business from that Cincinnati place, but
Hmm.
it's more of a convenience thing, I would
Oh,
say.
sure. So you work, the company works with Hollywood executives, I guess you would say, that come to Cleveland and say, "Hey, we'd like to do a film on Public Square," and
Yeah.
your company coordinates that with
Yeah. So
Hollywood, so to speak.
so like we're usually the first line of communication when a film or television series is looking to shoot here. We'll usually break down the script, we'll provide some scouting photos, and then, if they're interested based on those photos, we'll take them, we'll bring them in, we'll fly them in and put them up in a hotel. And then if the interest goes beyond that, that's when we start to, connect them with local industry professionals who can take on the projects full time because
Yeah.
the one thing it is, sometimes I've described it like speed dating a little bit when you're working with these projects because it's like you get to know them very well, but then immediately you have to break up with them and give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, but that in I think like at first when I started at the commission, because I did come from working freelance on a lot of the jobs, at first it was almost just like uh it was it's like you have each project is like that's like your whole life for like that entire month or two while you're trying to attract them, and then you have to immediately move on to the next thing. But I've just learned now over the years not to get too attached to a project, but knowing for the greater good that project then is going to hire a lot of locals. It's going to help bring money to the local economy,
Okay.
and the job is to always make sure that there's the next film after that.
So I had heard, and I don't remember if I heard this at one of the meetings with Greater Cleveland Film Commission, that
Yeah.
oftentimes there's drawbacks in this area, like in Cleveland, and I don't know if it's political or if it's
Mhm.
taxes or what I've seen, like some. I don't know how it works. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but if
Sure.
let's say Steven Spielberg comes in and says, "Hey, I want to do ET 3 or something," or I don't know if there was a two, but
Yeah.
so what? I mean, if Cleveland says, "Okay, we'll give you these kind of tax breaks," and
Well, yeah.
if Spielberg doesn't like the tax breaks, he just picks up his money and goes someplace else. Is that how it works? I'm just
Um,
using Spielberg as an example.
sure, sure. Well, we would always love if Spielberg came
Yeah,
to Ohio, of course.
yeah.
But the so basically how it works is there is a motion picture tax credit for the state of Ohio. So if a
Oh,
film is interested, they would apply for that, and then if they get it, they would get 30% rebate based on what they spend in Ohio. So there are currently no Cleveland local incentives, but I will say, just comparative to Atlanta, New York, Los Angeles, it is more cost effective to make a movie here. And then, the 30% rebate is probably, it's comparable to quite a bit of the other incentives that are available in other states.
Hmm.
Um, so we're always working on ways to make it better. And right now, there is a bill that's circulating in the Ohio Senate that would potentially raise our annual cap because right now it's at 40 million annually.
Hmm.
So we're hoping to raise it to a higher amount. At the very minimum, $100 million per
Wow.
year. So that would help attract more things. And part of this is generated because some of our surrounding states are competitive.
Yeah.
So, Pennsylvania just recently went to $100 million tax incentive. Kentucky went to a 75 million. Illinois just raised their incentive
Hmm.
quite a bit as well, and Indiana just started a tax credit for the first time ever. So, the competition to stay relevant and stay competitive, it's really, we're trying to let the state legislation know that, we need to make some changes in order to stay competitive with this current field.
Excellent. That's excellent. I never even thought about any of this until I went to one of your meetings, and I had no idea. I just got into film production myself a couple of years ago, so it's
Yeah.
just knowing what I had to do by myself to make a film. When I watch Hollywood productions, I just can't imagine the money behind it and the production staff and the paperwork. It just must be massive just to
Yeah.
get the production rolling before you even not rolling, but get it set up financially ahead of time. There must be a
Yeah.
huge.
It's interesting because when I first started, or right out of college, there weren't as many production companies locally, or there weren't as many opportunities. So, like, I worked on a lot of very low budget productions. And so, like, the first time when I was able to get on a larger production, I was just kind of, I don't know, I was kind of dumbfounded about all the things that go into it. Like, I just
Mhm.
assume it's like, hey, you got a camera,
Yeah.
you got sound, you
Yeah.
got some people and some actors, let's go. But yeah, it's interesting how many and complicated, like how many things are involved with it. But certainly, I think a lot of things that you learn on the very small budget movies apply to the
Mhm.
larger things. It's just more money and more people.
Now, have you always been involved in entertainment? I mean, do you remember a time in your childhood where you went, I want to be in films in some way, shape, or form? Is there a defining
Yeah,
moment?
there was. So I growing up, my household didn't have like a camcorder, but my grandparents had a VHS camcorder, and we're
Mhm.
always filming things. So a lot of times I would ask if I could hold the camera,
Yeah.
and so that I think that kind of helped give the spark in my head. And then
Mhm.
eventually in high school, my parents purchased, like a VHS-C camcorder for my family, and so a lot of times I was bringing it to high school. I was kind of like that nerdy kid who just always had it with me because I always felt like I should just be capturing something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of times I was, instead of book reports, I was asking the teachers if we could make an adaptation of, Great Gatsby and, and stuff like
Wow.
that.
Do you have
Um,
any of those films from back
I
then?
I do. I just I recently was given, or some of these VHS-C tapes were unearthed at my at my mom's house. So I'm in the process of converting a lot of them. One of them we did was oh gosh, Lord of the Flies, and
Oh, wow.
we attempted um to make a because one of the classes, like the teacher liked to show a lot of movies, so like we tried to make a all right, so instead of West Side Story, we called it East Side Story, and it was a Japanese version of it.
Oh,
So like
wow.
it was our,
Did
it
you
probably would not be very PC, but it's just a lot
Yeah.
of karate type stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say karate instead of knife fights,
Yes,
something
yes.
like
So
that. Yeah, yeah.
so
That's
yeah,
hilarious.
as I was as I was like looking into colleges, um you ever see the movie Rushmore, the Wes Anderson movie?
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes I was not exactly like that kid, like the way how he acts, but I was like involved in like every club. So I think like I really had such a great time in high school that sometimes college was an afterthought. And
Mhm.
I was the oldest of four. So I was
Oh.
kind of the guinea pig in my family because my parents, they got married pretty young. So my dad went to like a technical school. My mom worked at a movie theater actually,
Oh, wow.
and so like when all the college stuff was, for like PSATs and ACTs, like I just like sometimes I was just like, oh, I'm supposed to do this stuff.
Yeah.
um, so I ended up going to the University of Akron.
Mhm.
They don't really have a film program, but they had a media production program. So that's kind of like where I've, planted the flag, and I was like, all right, this like I'm going to go all for this.
Yeah. Now you're not related to George Wendt, are you? From
I am
Cheers?
not. I'm
Okay.
not, but I think that's you know myself, my dad, like we are asked that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I was debating whether to ask you that or not,
No,
or
no,
yeah,
no,
you would just
no.
hang up on me.
I think it's hilarious. No, it's like sometimes it's like, oh man, maybe there's all this talk of like nepo babies or something. And I was like,
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
that could have been my in or something if we were related. But
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe if I ever did one of those, my 23 or whatever,
Yeah.
maybe we have a relation, or like a bloodline relationship, like many, seventh cousin or something like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
as far as I can tell, no.
What when you were in Akron, you had an internship at the Tribeca Film Studios, correct? Or was that
Yes.
after Akron U?
That was in my senior year of college. So a good friend of mine from Akron, her name's Stephanie. She got a job there. She was like a receptionist at Tribeca, so she helped me get an internship there. It was great. Um, and it was, I think at the time, it was only like 2 days a week. So she also helped get me connected to this other company that was in the same building
Mhm.
because the cool thing about the Tribeca Film Center was that they had multiple offices, so like a bunch of different production companies could be in there.
Well, you worked on a film with Robert De Niro, right? The Good Shepherd?
Yes. That was I was an intern there, and so there were. I would say I never. It's like I don't even think it's like officially on the credits or whatever, but there were times where we would help in the post-production phase, like we were helping to transport footage or transport certain things to the
I see.
editor of the film. So it like the editor was merely like a few blocks away from the compound, or like from the Tribeca
Yeah.
film offices. So there sometimes it's like I feel weird about, IMDb thing that says intern, because like there's probably no documentation that says I was ever an official intern, but I was at
Yeah.
least intern at the offices and sometimes help there.
Well,
So
that's a good thing to have on there.
yeah, well,
Did
yeah.
uh,
If from what I remember, there were times where they were doing test screenings of of the movie, because that, that film, I think the final run time, was about 2 hours and 40 minutes, but there was a time period where they were toying with the idea of making it, 3.5 to 4 hours. And
Wow.
I remember just some of the discussions, like when they did some of these screenings, it was like, there was talk about maybe selling it to HBO so it can be split up. But
Hmm.
then I think cooler heads prevailed, and they cut it down to a much more, um,
Yeah.
relatable film length.
Did you get to meet De Niro?
Yes, on
Oh,
a couple occasions, there were times where, like, I would have to go get certain coffee for him, or, we would take mail up to his office. So he has a production partner, Jane Rosenthal. So they basically had some of the top floors where it's like almost broken up into two in the offices.
hmm.
So he had a pretty large wing. She had a pretty large wing. But yeah, I mean, he seems like, a very nice man, but he also seemed very shy. So it
That's what
was,
I've heard. Yeah.
yeah, it was, so it was a lot of times, like, when we get to interact, it was mostly pleasantries, talk
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
weather, nothing.
You didn't get to call him Bobby. Hey,
Right,
Bobby, can
right,
I get you some coffee, Bobby?
right.
No.
Nothing too deep,
Yeah.
but it was still just like the cool thing of, like, being in the presence of a legend.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I really, I had a great time there, and it just kind of gave me the confidence that, whether I stayed in New York or came back to Ohio, that, I could really, hopefully make a mark in this business.
Yeah, that had to be a huge at that age to meet De Niro and encourage you to keep going,
Yeah,
in pursuit of your dream or your hopes, working in the industry. I can imagine that would be great. And
yeah,
while you were at school, you started your documentary, the End of the World. It's the end of the world as we
yes,
know it. And
yeah.
that I think is, see, I had completely forgotten about this, where they played that song over and over again for 24 hours. And
Yes.
when I was researching some things about you, I couldn't remember if it was before they went to R&B and hip hop, or if it was before they became alternative. And I think it was, well, you can tell the story, but
Yeah.
what inspired you to make this film?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that station was, it was one of the last locally owned, um, rock stations in Cleveland.
Hmm.
So in for a while, it was called Power 108, and
That's
then
right.
in the
Yeah.
early 90s is when it flipped to 107.9 because of the 90s alternative boom.
Yeah.
Um, and they started the station by playing "It's the End of the World as We Knew It," and then, or as we know it, and then they finished it with that.
Okay.
But
It was both.
yeah, so in between, in '96, when, and this is like kind of maybe getting a little too in the weeds, but the Telecommunications Act of '96 allowed, stations, or like companies like Clear Channel at the time,
Hmm.
Infinity, to, acquire more than one station per city.
Hmm.
And before that, it was almost seen as monopoly if if you had multiple in the same, market.
Yeah.
So that it lifted so that's what, when all this, like, consolidation started. And
Hmm.
so, I was, I'm 39, so I actually wasn't, you know, 92 when it became a station. I was only 9 years old. So, like,
Wow.
but, but I was always kind of a radio nerd.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
listened to a lot of different radio. And so a lot of us who, or a lot of my friends, like, love that station, and we remember very distinctly the day that it went off the air.
Mhm.
So did some
And
research.
and what they did is, I don't know if I said this, they played the song by REM, "It's the End of the World,"
Yes,
over and over again for 24 hours at when the show when the station first went on the air, and then when they went off the air. It's
correct.
kinda okay.
Yeah. So when thinking of like an idea for this college class, we were just spitballing the one day and we're just like, what station I really miss is the end. And
Uh,
and then the question always came up like, why did that station come to an end? And
mhm.
so then, by doing a little bit of research, because there were some pretty good websites that were out there, but we were able to get in touch with some of the disc jockeys and film a couple, and then we made like a 10-minute short. And it's one of those things that like I couldn't really like just put it out there on the internet, because it has, during college, it's like you can put as many um you know songs that you wanted in it. But the short, we showed it to some people, and it got enough buzz, or like good marks, that we
Mhm.
were able to get other people who used to be on the station. And we also got certain musicians who were willing to contribute, because they remember breaking some of their music on that station.
Yeah.
So REM, oddly enough, after like doing once again some more research, they approved of us having the song in the film, which was like really important.
Oh,
I think
wow, that's excellent.
of the story. And at the time, that's when they were still um, a band, because like right now they're technically broken up. But so we signed this deal, and they gave it to us, what's called a gratis license, which is for free,
Oh,
but
wow.
with the understanding that after a certain amount of years, that if we wanted to, sell DVDs or Blu-rays or something like that, that we would have to renegotiate.
Wow. Yeah.
So right now the movie, it is on Vimeo, and I will send you a link to
Oh,
watch it.
cool. Yeah, yeah, I'd like to see
But
that.
it's like a private link on Vimeo. But we are in the process right now of doing that renegotiation, and hopefully, um, at the end of this year, we might be able to finally put it on Blu-ray or DVD,
Oh,
which
that's excellent.
I'm very excited about. But one of the problems, and with any filmmakers who's listening out there, if you've ever made something, now, like, because it's almost been 20 years since we made that, which is kind of blows my mind a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, time flies.
But
Wait till you get to be my age.
right.
You probably hear that from all the old geezers, like, "Wait till you
Right.
get to be my age.
Well,
Time
the
flies."
one thing that's funny is just like, sometimes hard drives, after a certain amount of years,
Yes,
are not great, or they're not very reliable.
or they're
And
corrupt or something goes wrong with them.
yes, and that's one of the problems that we have with the original file of the movie.
Oh,
So, but thankfully, I've saved all it was shot on mini DV, so we have all the mini DV tapes. So soon I'm going to go to one of the dub houses around here, and just I'm going to like recapture all the footage, so I can put it, we can like hopefully enhance it, make it look a little
mhm.
better, because it was, like I said, I mean, when shooting this in like 2005, 6, 7, you know, there weren't as many HD cameras, of course. And
Mhm, mhm.
so it
Did
being
you shoot with the whole staff, or did you do this by yourself?
um we had like, basically it was a lot of just my fellow classmates that
Okay.
every now and then, if somebody was available, they would help. But yeah, I mean, in the initial phase, there was like a core of us, about 3 or 4. And then as you know, sometimes docs can just drag on.
Yeah.
It's just whenever somebody was available, I was grateful for the help.
So you
But
didn't have, like, a script and the whole production thing with storyboards and the
yeah,
whole
not
thing. You just
not
kinda
really.
Okay.
not really. And, I think there recently I rewatched it again. Because it's one of those things where I'm proud of what we were able to accomplish, and I'm proud that it opened at the or played at the Cleveland International Film Festival, and it played a
Yeah,
couple
yeah,
other places. But, there are certain things I would probably have done a little better,
sure.
a little different now. But no, I mean, it's just one of those things that I look back, it's just like, wow, like I was like 23 or so when making that.
Yeah.
And um, you know,
I saw
I
some of it, the little clips I could find, and, it not to be condescending, but to think of myself at the age of 23, I couldn't have done well, I didn't know anything about film at the age of 23, but for 23-year-olds who are just in college to make that, it was really I mean, you would never guess it was a college production, and I mean that in a good way, and I don't know if that isn't
no, thank you.
a backhanded
Thank you.
compliment, but, yeah, I really liked what I saw, and it was entertaining, and it was edited in such a way you had all the different DJs and people talking about how it affected them and how the takeover by, I think it was Clear Channel or
Yeah.
the big
Yeah.
company, because I remember when Clear Channel took over Cleveland radio, and it was in the late 90s, and I'm listening to Light My Fire by The Doors, and they cut the organ solo, the keyboard solo out of the
Sure.
song. Like, why did they do that? I was furious. I almost called the radio station, but I probably would have talked to a robot. But I was like, they must have found a market reason to take out the organ solo, because the mass survey they did said people don't like it, so take it out. You'll get more advertisers in with the organ solo out. But anyway, I remember that whole era where Cleveland kind of gradually became Clear Channel, and the
Yeah.
formatting all changed. I think I don't know if it was all the stations, but they were all taken over by Clear Channel, weren't they?
Yeah, most of them were, and then some were owned by Infinity, which is now, and then it became CBS Radio. Now it's called Odyssey.
Oh,
Um,
okay,
so yeah, I think Odyssey's like in Cleveland at least, 98.5, 92.3,
okay,
4, stuff like that. So but then clear channels like WMMS and all that. And now the end is owned by Radio One, which is they specialize in um, urban radio. So
but Clear
uh,
Channel is now iHeart, right?
correct, iHeart.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I am doing that film was great, and I think there's part of me that I don't know. Sometimes I look at the time or like back then it's like maybe by now I should have had like 2, 3, 4 docs, but there were some that there was like one that I started which is about basically there were all these Catholic churches that were closed and they fought to reopen.
Hmm.
So I followed that for a couple years, and then eventually it's kind of interesting because then I started working more in the feature films in town. So I basically ended up making a deal with this filmmaker who was working on something very similar,
Hmm.
and licensed her for no money though. But I licensed her some of the footage that I had shot, and then it got used in this documentary. So that in a way, it's like I guess my second film really just or my second feature film got absorbed into this other film.
Oh, I
But
see. Okay.
but currently, I am finishing up a documentary about a local filmmaker here. His name's Robert Banks.
Okay.
Robert is an internationally known experimental filmmaker,
Mhm.
but he too oftentimes is he's sometimes hamstrung by the money when it comes to making movies. So sometimes it takes him a very long time to get a project done. So
Oh,
he,
yeah.
he's been working on his very first feature film, which is called Paper Shadows. He shot it on 35 millimeter, and he's still in the process of editing it in the in the way that he wants it to be done. So like the
Mhm.
film is edited digitally, but he wants it to be on a 35 millimeter print. So
Oh.
been following him for a couple years as he goes through the trials and tribulations of trying to get this movie done.
Mhm.
So it's called Robert Banks. We'll talk about that later. So we're hopeful that we'll be almost wrapped with this by the end of the year or early next year. But this film has been in the works since the first day of filming was February 2nd, 2017. So
Wow.
so
Wow.
it's been a long journey, but the thing with and as you know, like I think documentaries sometimes they can take a while.
Oh, yeah.
It is snail's pace, but um when you have the determination to get it done, it doesn't matter sometimes how long it
Yeah.
takes, as long as you eventually finish it.
Now, did is this you're not doing this all by yourself. Did you write it and you're directing it, but you got cinematographer or you got somebody helping you? Because the problem I have
Yes.
when I do it by myself is like, I can't be the cinematographer and sit in front of the camera because my most recent one, it was like really hard to get me in focus and get the lighting right because it's
Sure.
easier and you're just doing somebody, so to speak, you're filming them. But so you've got a whole staff working for you, or
Yeah, so I have it's a small but mighty staff.
Mhm.
The main one of my the main collaborator that I'm working with on this, his name's Rob Montague. He's the editor of the film. He's also, he shot some of it. Um and there was a original person, Mick Jones, who was like he's technically the co-director of the movie, but just for different reasons, he kind of stepped off from the project. Not in a bad way, just like, he was kind of, because it's been taking so long, he just wanted to do something else. And
Yeah, yeah,
but he's still going to be a producer on the film. And my wife is technically a producer on it as well. But a lot of times during the pandemic, it was just myself, a camera,
hmm
a lav a lav mic, and with Robert, just because
yeah.
with the subject, because the editor was you know he kind of had some health issues, so like he wasn't comfortable doing anything during the pandemic. So for at least, yeah, about a year and a half, it was just a lot of times it was me and him, or me and the subject. And I feel like we got some really good stuff during that time. So like, it helped kind of shape some of the narrative of the film. And um yeah.
How did you meet him, and how did you come up with this idea? I mean, did you have an in with
Yeah.
him, or did you just call him up and say, "Hey, I like your work. Can I do a
Ye-
documentary on you?"
Yeah, a good friend of mine, who unfortunately passed away during the pandemic,
Mm,
his name is Rob Lucas. He introduced us once
mhm.
at the Cleveland Cinematheque, where Robert is a staple there. He usually sits in the front of the films. He's usually very opinionated about movies, but he also like does this, like he always is laughing or has like this loud clap when a movie starts. So that's kind of how I was introduced to him. And then over the time, when he was working on this film called Paper Shadows, I would sometimes work as an extra hand, like basically either like a camera assistant or a grip. So I got to work on his movie that he's been taking forever to make. And that's what kind of sparked the idea, where I was just like, he's such an eccentric and likable person. I feel like he deserves some kind of documentary, because
Sure.
he's had his experimental shorts have played all over the world, a lot of
Oh,
big
wow.
festivals like Sundance and everything. And a lot of sometimes, like locally, a lot of people know who he is locally, but there's also like a huge contingent. If I just went around with the camera asking people, have you ever heard of Robert Banks? There might be a lot of people who say they don't. So
Mhm.
I think part of this film is to hopefully give him a profile, and the fact that he is and not that it's all about black and white, but he is an African American filmmaker,
Mhm.
trying to do this. Grew up from very humble, beginnings and neighborhood. That he is internationally recognized, but sometimes not even recognized in his own backyard is kind of interesting.
Do you have any distribution channels or anybody interested in distributing the film? Because that's what I found out when I just started doing this on my own. It's like, I went to Film Hub
Yeah.
and I found out they just distributed on channels like YouTube. It was all is it called pay to view or
Oh
not
yeah.
not pay to view, but it's you just make money through monetization. So do you have connections with distribution channels that say, hey, yeah, this film about Robert Banks is great.
Yeah.
If you can get it done, I don't know how that all works. I think they'll forward if you have a genuine distribution channel that they'll distribute it and market it for you for a price, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna probably try to roll the dice and apply to some of the festival market.
Hmm.
Um, but I will at some point we'll probably sign on an agent to try to sell it, a
Okay.
sales agent, I think. But first, like, we have to have it done. I think I have to feel confident enough, because then um I don't know, I'm not like a super wealthy person. And so, and a lot of times, like, I'm paying for a lot of this stuff myself. So
Oh
uh,
yeah.
we were fortunate to get, at one point we got a small grant to work on this, but I feel that it's difficult to get documentary grants.
That's one thing. Funding. That's if you have any advice for maybe that are listening are thinking of getting into films, where do you find the funding? I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
grants, and
there
that
are.
seems it's very expensive to make a film.
Absolutely. I mean, there are, at least in Cuyahoga County,
Hmm.
there are a couple different organizations that can help artists. They're not large grants, but like, they they had one where I was able to get $6,000, which is not a huge amount, but it helped for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then, like, Cuyahoga Arts and Culture is an organization that helps out. But sometimes you have to have some kind of nonprofit fiscal sponsor to be involved in order to get those. So yeah, I mean, it's just it's one of those things that and I don't want to sound like a complainer, like about this stuff, but yeah, I mean, sometimes when going for grants, I think there are opportunities out there, but it's just sometimes you have to dig and really just
Hmm.
sell it to the people of why you would need this particular money. But there are some people locally as well who have invested in some of these things. And but yeah, once again, it's one of those things. It's like you just have to, I think, cultivate a good relationship with somebody, earn their confidence, and really, hopefully, they see the same kind of vision uh,
Hmm.
that you have in the same project, and can hopefully get that money.
Now you were at the Cleveland International Film Festival for It's the End of the World, right?
Yeah,
And so that had to feel good to get
it was.
accepted at that film festival. It's local, but it's also international, and it isn't it. What do you call it? Academy Award.
It,
But you have potential to get an Academy Award if you win and all that stuff. It's not like the small ones.
Yeah, it is eligible for the short film program. So, say if you make a short doc, a
Hmm.
short animated, or live action, if it is the winner of the festival,
Yeah.
it's then eligible for the Academy Awards. But no, I mean, the Cleveland International Film Festival has always been super great to myself, and there have been times where I've worked there seasonally as well,
Hmm.
just because I love the people that work there. and it's just such a great event for Cleveland, and puts us on the global film stage. And so I am planning to help out with this year's festival, which I think the last couple years it's been a little bit of a hybrid, where mostly online and then some of it's in person.
Hmm.
And last year it was back in person and there was still some online. But this year I think is hopefully going to give a lot of people confidence to come back
Yeah, yeah,
to there. So not that it's obviously not going to be guaranteed, but by having a good relationship with that festival, my hope is, like, when we're done with this, the Robert Banks doc, that hopefully it can play there as well. And
well, it had
uh,
to feel great when you got accepted into a
oh
big
yeah,
film festival. I mean, you had to have been on cloud 9 because I
yeah,
tried to get in there and I got declined there in the Athens International Film Festival, and I even tried some of the real big ones out west and in Europe, and it was like, yeah, it was a pipe dream,
yeah.
but
I was very nervous, because I had volunteered with them a little bit, so some of the people who worked there got to know me. And when I submitted the film, I said, "Please be honest. If it's not good, don't put it in." Yeah,
oh, that's not, yeah.
So I paid the fee. I did all the whatever we had to do, and then when I remember being called into the head programmers at the time, his office.
Hmm.
That's when he let me know that it was going to play.
Oh, great.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I probably cried a little bit in
Yeah.
a good way,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, but then it was pretty special because it played in two theaters at the same time, and it was pretty much sold out. So I will never forget that, just getting to introduce it to an audience. And you know uh, that's where some of the insecurities come in, where it's just like, oh, can this be a little more perfect,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
could the sound be better? I think while I was playing, like, I just made sure that it started. Then I went in the hallway for a while, just kind of paced just
Yeah. Oh,
until
yeah.
I knew it was over, because we were going to have to do a Q&A.
And
But
it's like that with any piece of art. Like, if I do a painting or and somebody looks at my stuff, I kind of cringe a little bit because I can see the imperfections even in the films I've done. It's like, and I'll say to my wife, "Do you see that?" She's like, "No, what are you talking about?" Like, "Oh, there was something I did wrong in the editing," and she's like, "No, I didn't even see that," and nobody's going to notice unless they know film. And
right,
he always
right,
reassures me, that most people aren't
yeah.
going to pick up on that.
But yeah, I mean, the feedback was mostly good. I mean,
Oh, good.
there were certain people who, yeah, I mean, there were certain people who thought on some technical levels it wasn't super great, and I'm grateful for that too. I mean, it's hard to
Hmm.
hear at the time, because you want to just embrace the positive. But uh, you know, I think that's just how we always get better. And but yeah, it was a very great moment for sure.
What do you think is the hardest thing about working on a film or just in the film industry? Is there something that really sticks out in your mind that really makes you go, "Boy, this is tough"?
Yeah, I think sometimes it is balancing the the work life with personal life at times.
Mhm.
So, when I used to freelance on the movies, and everything, you know, sometimes, you're working upwards of like 60 hours a week. And then on Fridays, usually, sometimes depending on the schedule, is you might start at like 4 p.m. on a Friday, and you don't finish until about 4 a.m. on a Saturday. So by the time you get home, it's like 6, and you sleep for most of the day. And
Yeah.
you realize, like, you have to do laundry, you have to do some life things. And then, yeah, I mean, I think it's part of the reason why I enjoy working now at the film commission, where it's like I still get to dabble in the film life, but I get to go home after 5 p.m. usually.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the things. And I know, when I first started dating my wife, I was working on this movie that was a really like it was just kind of a mess in a lot of ways,
Hmm.
and it was just I was so like tired whenever we would get to hang out during the filming of that. So
Yeah.
it's
Oh, yeah.
so yeah, it kind of makes you moody and everything. So, but I think there are sometimes you have to make those sacrifices when making a film to fully give yourself to it. But then at the same time, you have to make sure that it's good for you. On a personal level.
Oh,
So
sure, sure.
yeah, I would say that that is probably the one hardest thing about working on a movie for sure.
Have you seen the Robert Crumb documentary?
I have, I
You
have.
know that that took 10 years to make.
Wow.
I just found that out a couple months ago. I just about dropped my teeth when I saw that. I was like, 10
Yeah,
years. And I guess, I can imagine just, I kind of read that Crumb didn't want to do it after a while. He was sick of it. And this guy who was kind of friends with him said, yeah, we got to keep going. And it's a great
yeah.
documentary. I really love
Oh,
it.
absolutely. No, that's like it was somewhat of an inspiration for the Robert Banks documentary.
Oh, really?
So was American Movie,
Oh,
uh,
okay.
which I have you seen that one?
No, no.
Well,
Oh, I'm going to
American
write that
Movie,
down.
that's one of my favorite documentaries. It's about this guy who makes these low budget horror films, and he has like a best friend who unfortunately he just recently passed away. But him and his best friend, they're from Wisconsin, so they have like those
Yeah.
kind of Fargo type accents, like oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, if you can find that one, that's one of my favorite docs of all time. But that and Crumb came out
Yeah.
like around the same time, and those are big influences on me for this
Well,
particular.
the opening scene in my current documentary, Road to Forgiveness, is inspired by, I think it's the opening scene in the Crumb documentary where they're scrolling through credits and I think it's a camera on the rails and it's going, I think, right to left, scanning over his artwork or something like that. Prints of it on a tabletop. I don't know if you remember that shot. I
Oh
think it's the
yeah,
very
yeah,
beginning. And
yeah,
I thought, oh, that's a perfect. I can do that with my family photographs and put my parents' wedding pictures and just I had this cheap rail system here in the house, and I just went like that, and that's definitely taken from the Crumb documentary, but
yeah. That's great.
I kind of cheeked it off. This. So, are you working on some other than the Robert Banks film? Is there anything else you're working on,
Yeah, I mean, right now, just
or
with
anything you want to plug? I should say.
sure with the commission, we're always looking for, we're always scouting for the next film. We currently have a movie shooting in Cleveland, called Lost and Found in Cleveland.
Okay.
So
Oh,
we're
really? It's
excited
called.
about that.
It's about Cleveland in a way, or
Yeah,
it's just filmed
yeah,
here.
yeah. It's a romantic comedy. It revolves around the PBS's Antique Roadshow. So
Oh,
they got the rights from PBS, or they got the approval from PBS to make this romantic comedy about it. It has Martin Sheen
oh,
and
nice.
and then we have a couple things that are in the works, but not allowed to really say what the
Sure.
films are. But pretty excited about that. And then just in other kind of things, I'm helping to produce some of my friends' projects. There's like a short or two on the table for this year, and
Hmm.
there's a documentary, another documentary that I've been helping with. I'm an associate producer on. It's by the company called Transition Studios, which is local, but they're making a doc series about girls high school wrestling in the state of Ohio. It's called Unsanctioned. For a long time, if girls wanted to wrestle, it was not considered a legit sport. It was just
Hmm.
considered a club. So
Yeah.
this documentary right now is just showing the advancements that the
Hmm.
girls have made in order to now get it legitimately sanctioned by the state of Ohio. So in a couple weekends, I'm going to be going to Columbus. We're going to be covering the state finals.
Oh, that's excellent.
But the really cool thing about it is that the girls who are in this, like the girls that we're following, they're all from like diverse backgrounds, and each of them has a very interesting story, and some of them come from lower income homes, some of them come from nicer income homes, I guess. But yeah, I think it's going to make for a pretty compelling
Yeah,
story.
yeah, that
The
sounds
hope
interesting.
is that they'll sell it to a streamer. I know, like the director really hopes Netflix, but I don't want to jinx it, so I'm not going to would
Yeah, I can edit
it.
that out so you don't
Yeah,
jinx yourself or something.
sure.
No, that's really awesome because I would think that you know, women's sports, girls' sports are looked at totally differently because there's actually women that play professional football in their own
Yeah,
league, and we saw a women's football game out in Arizona when we lived out there, and it wasn't the best two teams in the world. It's like watching a really bad high school team, but
yeah,
some of these ladies could really just knock the crap out of each other, and some of them could catch the ball. I mean, it was no different than watching guys. I mean, if you didn't
yeah.
know it was women, you wouldn't know. I mean, not that they were masculine. I just mean it didn't matter. And so there's a
Oh
whole
yeah,
thing where women's sports aren't taken as seriously, I don't think, in our country anyway, or probably around the world, I would imagine.
yeah.
But
Some of these girls, I mean, I can guarantee they could legitimately kick my ass.
oh yeah. No, that's awesome. And that's all I have for tonight. And if you
Yeah,
have anything you want to plug, or I mean, check out Mike's website here, which
yeah.
is go ahead.
So yeah, there's my website, MikeWendtProductions.com, or you can also, if you're interested in learning more about the documentary, it's RobertBanksDoc.com. So
Oh,
on there
okay.
you can find a teaser for the film, and then there's we've put a gallery at towards the end of the page where you can watch Robert's his
Oh,
award-winning experimental films. So just because I'm sure there's going to be some people when they say, like, why would you make a doc about this person? And then hopefully if they look at his work, then you can see, like, hey,
hmm,
there's some legit talent there, and a reason why we chose to go down this road.
excellent. That's excellent. I'm looking. I'll check that out when we hang up here. But Mike, thanks so much for coming on tonight. I
Thank
really
you for having
appreciate
me.
it. I appreciate how friendly you've been towards me over the last couple of years, and you give me a couple of referrals. And I wish you all the best luck with your documentary. I know how hard it is and how much
Thank you.
time you put into
Same
it.
for
So,
yours as well.
okay, thanks very much. So that was Mike Wendt. And if you want to meet a really genuine, friendly, sincere guy, Mike's your guy. He's friendly doesn't matter if you're an artist or not. He's very fair and reasonable. He's been very nice to me. Check out his website, MikeWendtProductions.com. He's also got a YouTube channel. I'll put links to both of those here in the description of this podcast and in the video. But thanks again, Mike, for being on the show. And I'm sure I'll talk to you soon. Everybody, thanks a lot for listening. I'm PTPOP on the Mind Revolution, leading you out of the rabbit hole, one grain of truth at a time.